Hello and good day, learners. And my name is Babakura Modu, and I am a classroom teacher. Today, I'm going to teach a clause. But before we get started, let's look at this. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to define a clause. 2. List the two types of clause. 3. Identify the independent clause and the dependent clause in a sentence. Without wasting much of time, let's dive into the lesson and get started. First, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words that has the subject and verb combination. The subject is the person performing the action, while the verb is the action performed by the subject. So that means you cannot have a clause unless when you have these two things, that means the subject and the verb. Let's look at this example. The man is here. A complete clause because we have the subject, which is the man, and then is the verb. Therefore, this is a clause. And if you have this sentence, the man who threw the book is here. The man who threw the book is here. So here we have two clauses. Who threw the book? Who is the subject? Threw is the verb. So therefore this one is clause. And the man is subject. That means is here is the completion of the first statement, that is the man. So it's here. So this is the independent clause. We have two types of clause. We have the independent clause, that is the main clause, and we also have the dependent clause, which is the subordinate clause. What is main clause, or rather independent clause? An independent clause is a clause that can stand on its own and make sense, while the dependent clause is a clause that cannot stand on its own because it depends on the main clause to complete its meaning. Therefore, dependent clause cannot stand alone and make sense. So let's look at the example under the dependent clause and the independent clause as well. So the boy stole the book which I bought is a sentence that has two clauses, the independent clause and the dependent clause. So the boy stole the book is the independent clause. Why do we call it a clause? Because it contains the subject and verb combined in the expression. The boy is the subject, stole is the verb. As I said earlier, the subject is the person performing an action, and the verb is the action performed by the subject. So we have a clause here. So, which I bought is also a clause, but it is a dependent clause. Which I bought yesterday is a dependent clause. Why do we call it a clause? Because we have the subject, which is I, and then we have bought, verb there. So if I now just come and tell you that which I bought, this statement is not meaningful, it is not complete, because it requires some statement. But if you now say, the boy stole the book which I bought, this is complete, because which I bought can be meaningful here. So the first statement is independent clause, while the second statement is the dependent clause, as I underline the two. So the second statement requires the first statement to complete its meaning. Now let's look at the second example. I am happy with the school that I attended. I am happy with the school that I attended. Here we also have two clauses. The first is the independent, while the second one is the dependent clause, because there is trigger at the middle. I am happy with the school is the independent clause, while that I attended is the dependent clause. If I just come and say that I attended, no one would understand this statement. But if I am happy with the school, you can understand this because it is a complete statement. We have I subject Am is the verb. Therefore, this is a clause. And I said that I attended. So we have I, which is subject. Attended is the verb. So we also have a clause there. So we have two clauses. That I attended is the dependent clause, while I am happy with the school is the independent clause. Let's look at the next example. I saw him when I was in school. I saw him when I was in school. So here we also have two clauses, independent and dependent clause. I saw him. This is the independent clause because it is meaningful and can stand alone. Everyone will understand this. If I said I saw him, you may understand the person. So I is the subject, so is the verb. Therefore, this is a clause, and this clause is independent. Then let's look at the other part, which is when I was in school. When I was in school is dependent clause. If I said when I was in school, then what happened there? Someone may ask, because the statement is not complete. So why do we say it is a dependent clause? Because it contains the subject and verb, and we have this when, which changes the whole statement. So I subject, was is the verb, therefore it is a clause, but this time it's dependent because we said it is not, it cannot stand alone and make sense. When I was in school, what happened? People may ask you. But if I said I saw him, you can even switch it. You can say when I was in school, I saw him. So here you can put comma when you say when I was in school. You put comma, then I saw him, then put full stop. But now start with the independent clause. That I saw him when I was in school. There is no need of comma, but rather you can put full stop at the end. So this is how you are going to identify or explain the whole term clause and its type. But before we end the lesson, let me give you an exercise. So identify the independent clause in the following sentence that you can see on the screen. We have three sentences there where we have the independent clause and dependent clause. So I want you to identify the dependent clause. Make sure you can identify the subject and the verb in the dependent clause that you identified there. That brings us to the end of today's lesson. Till we meet in the next video. Assalamu alaikum.